Hi, welcome back to my channel, and today I am going to talk about something that your English teacher probably didn't tell you. What if I told you that your teacher has been hiding something important from you, something that could completely change the way you speak English forever? Sounds crazy, right? But it's true. There's a secret about speaking fluently that most teachers don't mention, and I'm about to reveal it. Now, let's dive in. The first secret is something you may not want to hear. Fluency isn't just about memorizing vocabulary or learning grammar rules. Shocking, isn't it? If you've been focusing on these things to become fluent in English, you've probably been doing it the hard way. Yes, vocabulary and grammar are important, but they aren't the secret to fluency. In fact, fluency is much deeper than knowing words or perfecting your grammar. Fluency is about being able to speak without freezing up when you need to say something. It's about being comfortable and confident enough to express your thoughts in real time. So, what's the truth? The truth is, fluency comes from practice, not just from studying rules. You can know all the grammar rules in the world and have an amazing vocabulary, but if you don't speak English often, you won't become fluent. This is something your teacher may not have told you. And here's the kicker. The more you speak, the easier it gets. It's that simple. The secret isn't in memorizing more words or trying to speak perfectly. The secret is in using the language, speaking it, and practicing it every single day. I know you're probably thinking, but I can't speak perfectly yet. How can I speak every day? That's exactly why you need to speak. Fluency doesn't come from perfection. It comes from speaking, making mistakes, and learning from them. Think about it. When you were a child, did you speak perfectly from the start? Of course not. But you didn't wait until you were perfect to speak. You just spoke, you tried, you made mistakes, and over time, you got better. Fluency in English works the same way. Here's an important quote that will change how you think about learning English. Fluency is not the ability to speak without errors. It is the ability to speak with ease, confidence, and flow. Let that sink in for a moment. Fluency isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about speaking easily and confidently. Now, think about your own journey with English. When was the last time you really spoke English without thinking too much about grammar or worrying about mistakes? Do you avoid speaking because you fear getting things wrong? If that's the case, you're not alone. Many learners are afraid of making mistakes, and that fear holds them back. What your teacher probably didn't tell you is that mistakes are your greatest teachers. The more mistakes you make, the more you learn, and that's how fluency grows. It's through speaking, trying, failing, and improving. I want you to try something right now. Think about the last time you had to speak in English. Maybe it was in a class, or maybe you spoke to a friend. How did it feel? Did you get nervous? Did you hesitate? The next time you speak in English, try to forget about being perfect. Focus instead on just expressing yourself. The more you do this, the easier it will become. You might be asking, but how do I practice speaking if I don't have anyone to talk to? That's a great question, and here's the secret. You don't need anyone else to practice speaking. You can practice speaking by yourself. You can describe what you're doing, talk about your plans, or even just speak out loud to yourself in English. The key is to speak. The more you speak, the more natural it will feel. You'll stop worrying about mistakes and start enjoying the process of speaking. Think about this. What if you stopped worrying about grammar and started speaking more? Imagine how much more fluent you would become. So here's my challenge to you. Speak every day. Speak in English to yourself, to a friend, or even to an imaginary person. The more you speak, the better you will get. That's the secret to fluency. Let me leave you with a powerful quote. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Lao Tzu. Your journey to fluency begins the moment you start speaking, even if it's just a few words each day. Don't wait for perfection. Start now, speak, and watch your fluency grow. So, I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me, when was the last time you spoke in English without worrying about making mistakes? How did it feel? Let's start the conversation together. We'll make speaking English a habit. Let's dive deeper into the real secret behind fluency. What your teacher didn't tell you is that fluency is not just about grammar and vocabulary. I know this might sound surprising, but it's true. Fluency is something much more than knowing a list of words or memorizing rules. It's about speaking confidently, being natural, and feeling comfortable with the language as you use it. We all know the frustration of learning a new word or a new grammar rule. You study it, and then when you try to speak, it's like your mind goes blank. It feels like everything you learned just disappears in the moment. Why does this happen? Because fluency isn't about knowing words. It's about using them without thinking too much. You might be thinking, but how can I speak without thinking about the words or grammar? That's the key to fluency. Fluency comes from practice, and practice makes speaking feel natural. When you practice speaking regularly, you stop focusing on whether or not you're saying everything perfectly. Instead, you start focusing on expressing yourself clearly. And here's the good news. You don't need to know every single word or rule to do that. Let me explain. Imagine you're having a conversation with a friend. You probably don't sit there thinking about grammar or how to put words in the right order, right? You just speak. That's because you've practiced speaking your whole life. You've gotten so used to it that you don't need to think about every detail anymore. That's how fluency works in English too. The more you speak, the easier it becomes to express your thoughts without thinking about each word. But here's the catch. You can't expect to be fluent without speaking regularly. Your teacher might have told you that grammar and vocabulary are important, and they are, but speaking practice is what truly builds fluency. Every time you speak, even if you make a mistake, you are learning and improving. That's the real secret your teacher didn't mention. Think about a time when you spoke English. Maybe it was at work, at school, or with a friend. How did it feel? Did you get stuck trying to find the right words, or did you pause to think about the grammar? This is where speaking practice makes a difference. The more you speak, the less you will need to pause and think. You'll start to feel more comfortable and fluent. I know it's easy to feel discouraged when you make a mistake, but mistakes are part of the process. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn something new. I remember when I was learning a new language, and every time I made a mistake, I thought I was failing. But in reality, I was learning faster because I wasn't afraid to make mistakes anymore. I was growing, and that's what fluency is about. Growing with every word, with every conversation. One of the best things about speaking English every day is that you start to think in English instead of translating from your native language. At first, you might think in your own language and then try to translate it into English. But over time, your brain will start to think directly in English. It won't translate, it will just come out naturally. And that's when you know your fluency is improving. Here's a famous quote by Nelson Mandela. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. Fluency is about connecting with the language in a way that feels natural and heartfelt. It's about using English in your daily life so that it becomes part of you, not just something you study. The more you speak, the more it becomes second nature. Now let's talk about something that many people forget. You don't have to speak perfectly to be fluent. Fluency is not about saying everything exactly right. It's about communicating effectively. Even if you make a mistake, you don't need to speak like a native speaker to be fluent. You just need to speak in a way that makes you feel confident and comfortable. That's what makes communication successful. I want you to stop focusing so much on being perfect. Instead, focus on expressing yourself. Don't worry about whether every sentence is grammatically perfect. Just speak, make mistakes, learn from them, and keep going. Fluency is about the ability to keep speaking even when you make mistakes. It's about being persistent. So here's a question for you. How often do you practice speaking English? If you want to become fluent, you need to practice speaking every day. If you don't have someone to speak to yourself. Describe your day, talk about your plans, or simply talk out loud in English. The key is to speak as much as possible, and remember, it's okay to make mistakes. Let's talk about something that holds many English learners back from becoming fluent: the fear of making mistakes. Have you ever been so afraid of saying something wrong that you just stayed silent? Maybe you've thought, what if I mess up? Or, what if I sound silly? It's totally normal to feel this way. But here's the secret your teacher didn't tell you. Mistakes are not your enemy. They are actually your best friend when it comes to learning a language. Most of us are taught that mistakes are something to avoid. We think that to speak fluently, we have to be perfect. But that's far from the truth. Fluency is built through making mistakes. Every time you make a mistake, you are one step closer to improving your skills. Mistakes are how you learn. Think of them as small learning tools, guiding you toward better and more natural English. Why do we make mistakes? Well, when we try to speak a new language, we don't always know the perfect word or structure. It's natural. But guess what? Native speakers make mistakes too. Yes, they do. No one speaks perfectly all the time, and neither should you. If you don't make mistakes, you're not practicing enough. Mistakes are a sign that you're trying, that you're pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. So, why do we still feel so afraid of making mistakes? It's because we often associate mistakes with failure, but mistakes aren't failures. They are part of the learning process. When you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. It's an opportunity to learn and get better. Every time you get something wrong, you can fix it. and the next time, you'll do better. That's how fluency grows, through constant improvement. Think about it this way. When babies learn to speak, they don't get everything right at first. They try, they repeat words, they make mistakes, and they get better over time. You're no different. Language learning is the same process. The more you speak, the more mistakes you make, and the more you improve. The key is to keep going. Let me tell you a story. When I first started learning a new language, I was afraid to speak because I didn't want to make mistakes. I was afraid of sounding foolish, of not being understood. But then I realized something. If I kept worrying about mistakes, I'd never learn anything. So I took a deep breath and decided to just speak, even if I didn't get it perfect. And guess what? I learned faster. I made mistakes, but each mistake helped me learn. I figured out how to say things more clearly, and over time, I became more comfortable with the language. Mistakes weren't holding me back. They were helping me move forward. Here's a quote from Babe Ruth, the famous baseball player. "Don't let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game." In the same way, don't let the fear of making mistakes keep you from speaking English. The more you speak, the better you'll get, and the more confident you'll become. Mistakes are just part of the game, and the more you play, the better you'll be. Let's take a moment to think about something. How many times have you been afraid to speak because you thought you'd make a mistake? Imagine how much more confident you'd be if you just let go of that fear. What if, instead of worrying about being perfect, you focused on enjoying the process of speaking? What if you treated mistakes as a sign of progress? Think about how much faster you'd improve. Here's what I want you to do. The next time you speak English, don't worry about making mistakes. Focus on getting your message across. You'll probably make a mistake or two, and that's okay. When you do, just correct yourself and move on. The more you practice, the less those mistakes will matter. You'll start to speak more naturally, and you'll realize that fluency isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about speaking, learning, and growing from every experience. Let's take a closer look at something that many students don't talk about: the pressure to speak perfectly. If you're anything like me when I was learning English, you've probably felt this pressure. You feel like you need to say every word correctly, every sentence perfect. And when it doesn't happen, it's easy to get frustrated or discouraged. But here's the truth. Fluency takes time, and it's not about speaking perfectly every time. You might feel like everyone around you is speaking effortlessly, and you think you need to be at that level right now. But here's the secret. They didn't get there overnight. No one speaks perfectly all the time, not even native speakers. And guess what? You don't need to be perfect to be fluent. One of the biggest mistakes learners make is thinking they need to be perfect right away. This belief creates a lot of pressure and makes you afraid of making mistakes. But let me ask you this. Has anyone ever become fluent by being perfect on their first try? Of course not. Fluency is a journey, and like any journey, it requires time, patience, and practice. I'm sure you've heard this phrase before. Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, the same goes for fluency. You won't become fluent in English overnight, and that's perfectly okay. It's not about rushing to the finish line. It's about enjoying the journey and taking it step by step. Think about it. Each day you speak, you get one step closer to fluency. Each conversation, no matter how short or imperfect, is a victory. Fluency is built over time, through consistent practice and embracing mistakes. Here's something that might surprise you. The more pressure you put on yourself to be perfect, the harder it will be to improve. It's like trying to run a race while carrying a heavy backpack. If you just let go of that weight, the pressure to be perfect, you'll find that speaking becomes much easier. Instead of focusing on being perfect, focus on getting better. Every time you speak, you get one step closer. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that confidence is more important than perfection. I used to spend so much time worrying about getting everything right. I would study vocabulary, memorize grammar rules, and try to perfect every sentence before speaking. But the truth is, fluency isn't about saying the perfect sentence every time. It's about speaking with confidence and flow. When you speak confidently, you'll feel more natural, and that's when fluency happens. Let me tell you a little story. When I was first learning, I was terrified to speak because I was afraid of making mistakes. I would practice at home, but the second I had to speak to someone, I'd freeze. I thought I had to speak perfectly, and if I didn't, it would be a disaster. But over time, I realized that it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes, to pause and think, to even ask for help if you don't know a word. What's important is that you keep speaking and don't give up. I also realized something really important. Fluency isn't just about the words you say, it's about how you say them. It's about your confidence, your ability to keep the conversation going, and your willingness to make mistakes. Fluency comes when you stop focusing on being perfect and start focusing on speaking more, practicing more, and getting more comfortable. Here's a quote from Winston Churchill that perfectly sums up the importance of patience in language learning. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. This quote is a great reminder that fluency is a journey, and it's okay to stumble along the way. The key is to keep going. Don't stop practicing just because you make a mistake. Mistakes are just steps on the path to fluency. So here's my advice. Take the pressure off yourself. Speak even if you're not ready, even if you're not perfect. The more you speak, the more you'll improve. And guess what? The people you speak to will appreciate your effort. They won't be focused on your mistakes. They'll be focused on the fact that you're trying and learning. Every time you speak, you're becoming more fluent, and that's what matters. Now I want you to reflect for a moment. How often do you feel pressured to speak perfectly? Does that pressure stop you from speaking? I want you to let go of that pressure and just focus on communicating. Speak, make mistakes, learn, and grow. Remember, fluency is about progress, not perfection. I'd love to hear about your own experience. Comment below and let me know. Do you feel pressure when speaking in English? How do you deal with it? Let's talk about how we can overcome that pressure and become more confident in speaking. Now that we've tackled the pressure of speaking perfectly and the importance of making mistakes, let's talk about something that many teachers don't emphasize enough. Immersion. What if I told you that one of the most powerful ways to speak fluently is not just about studying grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary? It's about surrounding yourself with English in every part of your life. Immersion is the secret that can take your speaking to the next level. You may have heard the word immersion before, but maybe you've thought, how can I immerse myself in English when I don't live in an English-speaking country? Great question. The truth is, you don't have to live in an English-speaking country to immerse yourself in English. There are plenty of ways to surround yourself with the language, and doing this regularly can help you speak more confidently and naturally. So, what exactly is immersion? Well, it's simply surrounding yourself with English, listening to it, speaking it, reading it, and even thinking in it. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment to practice. You can start immersing yourself right now in your everyday life. And let me tell you, immersion is a game changer. Think about this. When you were a child, you didn't need to go to school to learn your first language. You didn't memorize grammar rules or vocabulary lists. You learned by being surrounded by language. Your parents, siblings, and friends spoke to you constantly, and through listening and speaking, you naturally learned how to communicate. That's how fluency works with any language, including English. The same principle applies to English. The more you surround yourself with English, the faster you'll start thinking in it. You'll stop translating words in your head and start speaking more fluently. But how can you do this when you're not living in an English-speaking country? It's simpler than you think. For example, you can start listening to English every day. Watch movies and TV shows in English, and not just with subtitles. Try it without subtitles, too. At first, it might seem difficult, but your brain will start picking up patterns. You'll begin recognizing words, phrases, and even accents. Over time, your ear will get used to how English sounds in real-life conversations, and you'll find that speaking becomes much easier. Another great way to immerse yourself is by listening to English podcasts and audiobooks. When you listen to English this way, you're not just learning vocabulary or grammar. You're learning how sentences flow, how native speakers connect words, and how to understand the natural rhythm of the language. This is an essential part of fluency that often gets ignored in traditional language learning. But immersion doesn't stop at listening. You can practice speaking English every day too. And no, you don't need to wait until you have someone to practice with. You can practice by speaking to yourself. It may sound strange at first, but this simple habit can help you get more comfortable with speaking. Talk about what you did during the day, describe things around you, or even talk to yourself in English about your thoughts. This will help you feel more natural when speaking, and it'll help you start thinking in English. Here's an example. When you're cooking dinner, try to think in English about what you're doing. For instance, say, I'm chopping the vegetables, or I need to add salt to the soup. This is a form of immersion that can help you start connecting English with your daily life. But what about real-life conversations? Don't worry. There are ways to practice even if you're not surrounded by English speakers. You can use language exchange apps to find people to talk to, or if you don't have a conversation partner, you can join online communities or English-speaking groups on social media. These are great places to practice your speaking and listening skills. Here's a powerful quote by Albert Einstein. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. This quote is absolutely true when it comes to language learning. The more you immerse yourself in English, whether by listening to podcasts, watching movies, or speaking every day, the more you'll learn and the better you'll get at speaking fluently. Immersion also helps you understand the culture behind the language. Fluency isn't just about speaking the words correctly. It's about understanding how people use language in different contexts. By watching movies, listening to music, and reading books in English, you'll start to understand how words and phrases are used in everyday life, which will make your speaking feel more natural and real. Here's the best part. You don't need to wait for the perfect time to practice. Immersion can start today. Every time you listen to a song, watch a TV show, or even talk to yourself in English, you're building your fluency. The more you immerse yourself, the more your brain will get used to hearing and speaking English. And over time, you'll start to speak more confidently without even thinking about it. So I have a challenge for you. Start immersing yourself in English every day. Even if it's just for 10 minutes, start listening, speaking, or reading in English every single day. Make it a habit, and you'll notice your fluency improve faster than you expected. Remember, fluency comes when you stop just learning about the language and start living the language. Now that we've discussed the importance of immersion, let's dive into one of the best-kept secrets of fluency that many teachers don't always share: the power of shadowing and how it can transform your speaking skills. Have you ever heard of shadowing? If not, you're in for a treat, because this technique is one of the most powerful tools you can use to speak more fluently in English. Let me explain what shadowing is. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a native speaker and try to repeat exactly what they say, as closely as possible, in real time. Imagine this. You're listening to someone speak in English, and your goal is to shadow them. You repeat the same words, the same intonation, and even the same rhythm. This technique is amazing because it helps you improve your pronunciation, understand sentence flow, and get used to the natural pace of speech. But here's the kicker. Shadowing is not just about repeating words. It's about mimicking the way native speakers speak. When you repeat what they say, you're also learning how to connect words, how to stress important words, and how to make your speech sound more natural. You'll begin to sound more like a native speaker, not because you've memorized specific phrases, but because you've practiced the natural way of speaking. You might be wondering, why doesn't my teacher tell me about shadowing? The truth is, many teachers focus on traditional methods, grammar drills, vocabulary memorization, and reading exercises. While these are important, they don't always help you sound like a fluent speaker. Shadowing, on the other hand, helps you speak English naturally, just like how you would speak your first language. You don't need any fancy tools to start shadowing. You can do this with podcasts, TV shows, movies, or even YouTube videos. It's simple. Just pick a short clip where a native speaker is talking, pause it after a few seconds, and repeat what they just said. Try to match their speed, tone, and rhythm as closely as possible. When you practice shadowing regularly, you'll start to notice a huge improvement in how you speak. But there's one thing you need to know. Shadowing works best when you practice it daily. The more you repeat, the more it becomes second nature. It's like learning to play an instrument. At first, it's a bit difficult, but with consistent practice, it becomes easier and feels more natural. This is exactly how shadowing works. It trains your mouth, your brain, and your ear to understand English the way it's really spoken. Here's something important. Don't worry about understanding every word at first. The goal isn't to understand everything immediately. The goal is to get used to the sound of the language. Over time, you'll start to understand more, and your speaking will become more fluid. The key is to keep listening and repeating until it feels more comfortable. I know it might sound a bit intimidating at first, repeating everything you hear, trying to sound just like a native speaker. But don't let that stop you. The more you try, the better you'll get. It's okay if you don't get it perfect the first time. Just keep practicing, and you'll see progress. This is how fluency is built. Shadowing also helps with one of the most important aspects of fluency, confidence. When you hear yourself speaking clearly and confidently, you'll feel more comfortable using English in real conversations. Shadowing trains your brain to produce the words quickly and automatically. Over time, this will build your fluency, and you'll start to speak more smoothly and naturally. Let's take a quote from Nelson Mandela that ties in perfectly here. It always seems impossible until it's done. At first, shadowing might seem difficult or unnatural, but trust me, once you start practicing regularly, you'll see how much easier it becomes. It might seem impossible now, but soon you'll be speaking with more confidence and fluency than ever before. So, how can you start shadowing today? Start by choosing a video or audio clip from an English speaker you enjoy. It could be a YouTube video, a podcast episode, or even a scene from your favorite movie. Play a small part of it, pause the video, and repeat what the speaker said. Do it over and over until you feel more comfortable. The more you practice, the faster you'll see improvements. You can even try recording yourself to track your progress. It's a great way to listen to yourself and compare how much you've improved. Now that you know the importance of shadowing and how it helps improve fluency, let's dive into another powerful aspect of learning to speak English. Real conversations. What's the difference between structured lessons and actually speaking with someone? Well, the truth is, real conversations are what will really help you become fluent. But the secret is that many teachers don't always emphasize the value of real, unscripted conversations. And here's why. They focus on the bookish language, which is helpful, but speaking fluently comes from practicing the language in real situations. Think about this for a moment. When you're in an actual conversation, the pressure is on. You have to think fast, respond quickly, and keep the conversation going. This is where you learn real-world English, not the perfect English from books. The English you learn from textbooks is useful, but it's often formal and doesn't reflect the way people really speak. Native speakers don't speak in perfect sentences all the time. They use slang, short phrases, contractions, and sometimes they don't even finish their sentences. This is something your teacher probably didn't tell you. Fluency comes from being able to speak naturally, just like native speakers do, and the best way to learn this is by having conversations in English. The more you speak, the more you learn how to flow with the conversation. You stop worrying about being perfect, and instead, You focus on expressing yourself clearly and confidently. And the best part? The more you practice, the easier it gets. Here's something I want you to remember. The best way to learn a language is to speak it. Books and grammar exercises are important, but they can only take you so far. To truly master speaking, you need to practice it in real-life situations. So whether you're speaking to a friend, participating in an English language exchange, or even practicing with a language app, the more you practice speaking, the more natural it will become. Let's take a look at a simple example. Imagine you're having a conversation with a friend about your day. You're not thinking about every single grammar rule or vocabulary word. You're just talking. You're telling them what happened, how you felt, and what you're doing next. In a real conversation, you don't have time to think about grammar rules or word lists. You have to keep the conversation flowing, and that's the beauty of real conversations. They teach you how to keep speaking no matter what. But I know it can be a bit intimidating at first, especially if you're not used to speaking in English. Maybe you feel like you're going to make mistakes, or you'll sound silly. Trust me, everyone feels that way when they start speaking a new language. But here's the truth. You will make mistakes, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, mistakes are a sign that you're actually trying. The more you try, the better you'll get. In real conversations, you're not expected to speak like a native speaker right away. It's about communicating your ideas and thoughts clearly. Native speakers know that language learners will make mistakes, and they appreciate the effort. So don't be afraid to speak. The more you speak, the easier it will get. Now let's look at something else your teacher might not have mentioned. Bookish English versus speaking English. In the classroom, you might be taught formal English, the type that's used in essays, reports, or official settings. But in real conversations, English is much more relaxed. People don't speak in full formal sentences. They use contractions like I'm instead of I am and gonna instead of going to. They might even skip words entirely because the meaning is understood. For example, instead of saying, "Could you please give me a pen?" you might hear, "Pass me a pen." That's why it's so important to practice English in real conversations, not just study the rules. Real-world English helps you speak more naturally and sound more like a native speaker. And that's where fluency comes from, being able to use the language in a way that feels comfortable, natural, and confident. Here's a quote from Mark Twain. "The secret of getting ahead is getting started." Fluency won't happen until you start speaking. So take that first step. Start speaking, even if it's just for a few minutes a day. The more you practice, the better you'll get. Don't wait until you're perfect. Speak now, mistakes and all. And remember, real conversations are key to fluency. I know you might be thinking, but where do I find opportunities to speak? That's a great question. The answer is simple. Everywhere. You can practice with a language partner, join an online speaking group, or even find a conversation partner through a language exchange app. There are countless opportunities to practice speaking English with others, and the best part is these conversations don't need to be long. Even just 10 to 15 minutes of speaking every day can make a huge difference in your fluency. So I have a challenge for you. Start speaking English every day, whether you're talking to a friend, a language partner, or even just talking to yourself. The more you practice, the more comfortable and fluent you will become. Remember, fluency comes from speaking, not from reading or memorizing. Now that we've covered speaking practice, immersion, and real conversations, let's talk about confidence, one of the most important elements of speaking fluently. You might be thinking, but I'm not confident in my English skills. What if I say something wrong? That's exactly what we're going to tackle today. You see, confidence is often the key to unlocking fluency. Without it, speaking can feel impossible, even if you know the language. Many learners don't realize that confidence is more important than being perfect when it comes to speaking fluently. Let me ask you something. How many times have you hesitated to speak because you were afraid of making a mistake? I know I have, and I know many of you have too. But here's the truth. The more confident you are, the easier speaking becomes. You don't need to speak perfectly to be confident. Confidence comes from speaking regularly, from knowing that mistakes are part of the process. Fluency comes when you stop caring about being perfect and just focus on expressing yourself. Think about it. Native speakers don't worry about making mistakes because they've been speaking for so long that it comes naturally to them. They don't think about every sentence before they speak. They just say what comes to mind. That's how confidence works. You don't think about it. You just speak. But how do you build this confidence? Here's a trick. Practice, practice, practice. Every time you speak, even if it's just a few words, you build confidence. The more you speak, the more natural it becomes. And here's something important. The more mistakes you make, the more confident you'll become. Each time you make a mistake and keep going, you're telling yourself, it's okay to make mistakes. I'm learning, and that is the secret to building confidence. Let me share a story. When I was learning English, I used to be so afraid of speaking in front of others. I'd always worry, what if they don't understand me? What if I make a mistake? But one day, I realized something. I will never get better if I keep worrying. I had to stop caring so much about being perfect and just start speaking. Once I did that, everything changed. I started speaking with more confidence, and guess what? I made fewer mistakes. The more I practiced, the more natural it felt, and the better I became. So what's the secret? You need to practice speaking out loud regularly. You need to practice thinking in English and expressing your thoughts without overthinking. When you do this, you'll start to feel more confident in your ability to communicate. And don't worry about sounding perfect. No one speaks perfectly all the time, not even native speakers. What matters is getting your message across and doing so with confidence. Here's a powerful quote by Tony Robbins. The only limit to your impact is your imagination and commitment. Fluency is not limited by your grammar or vocabulary. It's limited by your confidence. The more you believe in yourself, the more fluent you will become. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you develop through practice. And once you have confidence, speaking will no longer feel like a chore. It will feel natural and easy. Here's a trick that can help you boost your confidence. Start small. You don't have to start by having long conversations with strangers. Start by speaking for just a few minutes each day, even if it's just to yourself. Talk about your day, your plans, or describe something around you in English. The more you practice speaking, the less self-conscious you'll feel. Confidence comes from doing, not from thinking, "I'll never be good enough." You get better by speaking more, even if it's just for a few minutes a day. I know it's not always easy to speak confidently, especially if you're afraid of making mistakes. But remember, confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to speak and make mistakes without fear. If you're afraid of speaking, that fear will hold you back. But once you push through that fear, you'll realize that speaking is not as scary as you thought. So here's my challenge for you. Next time you're in a conversation, focus on speaking confidently, not perfectly. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just focus on getting your message across. The more you do this, the easier it will become, and you'll be amazed at how much your confidence grows the more you practice. Let me remind you of something very important. Fluency is a journey, not a destination. Fluency doesn't happen overnight. It's not something you can achieve once and forget about. It's a skill that grows and improves with time, practice, and perseverance. I want to share a final secret with you, one that your teacher probably didn't mention. Fluency isn't just about speaking well. It's about speaking often and consistently. The key to fluency is daily practice. Every single day, no matter how small the step, is a step toward fluency. It's like building a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it becomes. You've already learned some powerful techniques in this podcast. You've learned that fluency is built through practice, confidence, and mistakes. But I want you to remember this. It's not about how quickly you can speak or how many words you know. It's about your ability to keep speaking, to keep expressing yourself, and to keep improving even when it feels difficult. The process is more important than the result. So what's the most important thing to take away from everything we've talked about? Keep speaking. That's the most important piece of advice I can give you. Speak every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Speak out loud to yourself. Have conversations with friends or find someone online to practice with. The key is to keep using English in real conversations. The more you do this, the more natural speaking English will feel. Let me remind you of something. Fluency is not a gift. It's a skill. You can't just wait for fluency to come to you. You have to go after it, and you do this by speaking as much as possible, using the language in real-life situations, and committing to regular practice. No one becomes fluent just by reading or studying alone. You must speak. One last time, let me encourage you to stop worrying about mistakes. Remember, mistakes are part of the process. They're the stepping stones to improvement. When you make a mistake, don't let it hold you back. Fix it, learn from it, and move on. Every mistake means you're one step closer to fluency. The more you speak, the more confident you'll become, and the more naturally your English will flow. So, I want to leave you with this. Every day is an opportunity to get better. Speak every day, and you'll be amazed at how quickly your fluency grows. Here's one last quote to inspire you as you continue your journey. Success is the sum of small efforts, repeated day in and day out. Ow. Robert Collier. Every conversation Every word you speak is a small effort toward fluency. The more you do it, the better you'll become. Before we end, I want to ask you one final thing. Comment below and share with me. What's one action you're going to take today to continue practicing your speaking? How will you make speaking English part of your daily routine? I'd love to hear how you're going to keep going on your journey to fluency. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. You've learned a lot of valuable tips and techniques, but the most important thing now is for you to take action. Don't stop here. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and keep growing. See you soon. Bye for now. Copyright. Notice, the content of this podcast is protected by copyright law. Unauthorized reproduction or use is prohibited.